It's sad to think that someone deliberately tried to expose himself to COVID-19.
Intentional exposure? The LA County Sheriff's Department discovers surveillance video of inmates sharing a cup of water and breathing into the same mask. 21 inmates have now tested positive. And new guidelines at the White House, anyone in the West Wing must wear a mask or facial covering. This comes after 2 people close to the president and vice president tested positive. And President Trump now accusing some governors of failing to reopen their states for political reasons. Lessons learned as states ease their pandemic restrictions. We're getting a look at the efforts of other countries. What worked, what failed, and what's the takeaway for the U.S.? And exclusive reporting on one European country that still refuses to lock down at all. New developments in the Ahmaud Arbery case, the unarmed black man shot while jogging down the street in Georgia. Why state officials now want the U.S. Justice Department to step in. We speak exclusively with the lawyer for the latest person involved in this developing case. The latest news from the palace regarding the Queen and the efforts underway to keep her COVID-free.
Champions!
And late-breaking reports that the boys of summer could play after all. ESPN reports MLB team owners have approved a proposal to start the season in July. Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for streaming with us. I'm Lindsay Davis. It was a Mother's Day unlike any other. Many stayed away from mom in order to try to help keep her safe. And many are approaching reopening during a pandemic with a similar conflicted spirit. There is both a need and desire to work, but is it safe, especially as cases in this country continue to rise? Take a look at the precautions at this restaurant in Indiana. The dining room looks a bit more spacious than usual. It's a compromise that we're likely going to start seeing a lot more of. And today, the governor of New York said, quote, "We're starting a new chapter today," announcing the most concrete steps so far to bring New York, America's hardest hit state, back to life after hundreds of thousands have fallen ill and more than 26,000 deaths due to COVID-19. 45 states are now easing restrictions. ABC's Tom Yamas leads us off with the latest on the timelines and the risks.
Tonight, the state at the center of the coronavirus outbreak, taking its first steps towards reopening.
It's an exciting new phase. We're all anxious to get back to work.
But in hard-hit New York City, no major changes until June. Still too dangerous. Tonight, new analysis from the CDC reveals the toll in the city could be worse than first thought. Nearly another 5,300 deaths may be directly or indirectly linked to the pandemic. 45 states have now eased restrictions, but before reopening, many of those states had not met the White House guidelines calling for a 14-day decline in cases. Yesterday, thousands packing this rodeo in northern rural California.
We have constitutional rights. We have inalienable rights given to us by God.
In Naples, Florida, a new crackdown. Beaches there closed all over again after scenes like this. Beachgoers not practicing social distancing. And now health officials on the lookout for a new concern, that mysterious illness in children. Doctors calling it pediatric multisystem inflammatory syndrome. 10 states investigating potential cases, 93 possibly in New York. At least 3 children dying of the mysterious illness linked to the virus.
So what you're finding is the child first gets infected with COVID, sees some COVID symptoms, and then weeks later, there's sort of like this new illness with the mysterious symptoms.
That's what it's looking like so far, yes. Again, we still have a lot to learn, but it seems to be that this is an inflammatory response to the viral infection, that there may be a timing issue of a couple weeks.
In Detroit, 9-year-old Josie Paskvin had high fever and red eyes off and on for a week.
Well, my tummy hurted and my throat was like dry.
Doctors say the virus triggered an overreaction from the immune system, causing inflammation, similar to Kawasaki disease.
All we could think about is her little heart and, what could happen.
Josie is now responding well to the treatment, the same type used for Kawasaki disease.
Stay healthy. Stay strong.
And Tom Yamas joins us now with more. Tom, let's talk more about those mysterious illnesses impacting children. You spoke to a doctor treating some of those children, and what did he say?
Yeah, you know, they told us a few things that were interesting. First, usually with Kawasaki syndrome, which they say is very similar to what they're seeing now, historically that's affected kids under the age of 5. But now with this rare illness they think is connected to COVID-19, Lindsay, they're seeing it in older kids, even younger adults. And the advice this doctor had for us tonight, if your child has persistent fever for 3 days, please call your doctor. They need to see a medical professional immediately. Lindsay?
Really disconcerting. Okay, Tom Yamas, thanks so much. Moving now to the fight over reopening. It has been a messy one. Outrage after a restaurant in Colorado was fully open for business on Mother's Day, despite an order banning in-person dining. Many customers not wearing masks, not social distancing, and clearly not following the state's stay-at-home order. ABC's Clayton Sandell is in Denver now with more. Clayton, tell us more about what happened here.
Yeah, Lindsay, it is remarkable video, and it really is at the forefront of this national debate over public safety versus reopening the economy. This was on Mother's Day. It was recorded by Nick Puckett of Colorado Community Media at CNC Breakfast and Korean Kitchen in Castle Rock, Colorado. What you see, it was packed with people, most of them without masks. They had come to celebrate Mother's Day by dining in. That has been banned in this state since March 14th. The restaurant had been open, like many others, for takeout. And health officials say they warned the restaurant not to allow sit-down service. They did it anyway, and has now they've been shut down by the county health department for violating public health orders. Now, the owner says that she was not able to survive unless she opened for business. She had to do something to counter what she called government overreach and a violation of constitutional rights. Here in Colorado, in fairness, the number of new infections are tapering off. The growth is not very much, but the governor says there are still new cases. So take a listen to what he said today. He was not happy when he saw this video.
And I join most Coloradans in our frustration watching videos of people illegally packed into restaurants and thinking about all the moms and grandmothers and aunts and everyone who is put at increased risk of dying from this horrible virus. At a state, how well we succeed in social distancing makes a difference between success and failure. At the individual level, the stakes are even higher. It can make the difference between going on living or suffering a particularly agonizing, painful, and lonely death.
And these are tensions that we've seen play out coast to coast, Lindsay.
Surprising to see that so many people wanted to be in that restaurant there on Mother's Day. But moving from Colorado to California, Tesla's Elon Musk is now in a fight with local government over reopening a factory. Tell us more about that.
That's right. This is in Alameda County, California. Elon Musk saying that he is reopening the Tesla factory there. That is in violation of county health orders to stay closed. He tweeted today that if there were going to be any arrests, first of all, that he was going to be on the line with everybody else at this factory. But he says if there were going to be any arrests, he asked that he be the only one arrested. And we're seeing similar cases around the country. In Dallas, we had last week that owner of the hair salon who was arrested and promptly released. And then in the state of Pennsylvania, the governor there, Tom Wolf, has threatened to revoke licenses of businesses that stay open or that open up before county officials give the okay.
Clayton Sandell, thanks so much for your reporting tonight. And as states begin to reopen, more people are considering flying again. But there was an alarming image that caught our eye. A doctor who traveled to help infected COVID patients on his way home on a packed cross-country flight. He says he couldn't believe what he was seeing. So what are the airlines saying tonight? Our Gio Benitez reports.
Tonight, a viral tweet sparking concern. A doctor shocked to board a packed United flight home after volunteering to treat COVID-19 patients in New York. Dr. Ethan Weiss worried about the flight just 2 days earlier, and before that, receiving an email from United saying it would automatically block middle seats.
I'm probably more likely to get infected there than I would be in the ICU.
United flying Weiss and 24 other healthcare volunteers for free, saying the flight was 85% full. The airline saying it is limiting advanced seat selection, but cannot guarantee that all customers will be seated next to an unoccupied seat. As people slowly return to the skies, Friday before Mother's Day saw the most passengers since late March. And you can see it on planes. This flight today, the head of the largest flight attendants union now calling for federal action.
We need social distancing policies. We need deep cleaning policies. We need these face covering policies, and it needs to be directed and coordinated by our federal government. Safety cannot become a commodity.
And tonight, many in the industry are also pushing for temperature checks at TSA checkpoints. But so far, the TSA tells us no decision has been made. Lindsay?
And you, if you do need to get on a plane, what's the best way to make sure that you're as safe as possible?
So one of the things you can do, Lindsay, is just talk to the gate agent. Let them know that you're uncomfortable if there are too many people there at the gate, and you can go ahead and be rebooked to another flight. They will do that for you for free. But if you have to get on a flight, one of the things that I like to do before I even book these flights, I get on the phone with the airline, or I even check on the website as I'm booking these tickets, and I'll be able to see how many people are on the flight. How full is this flight? I never necessarily like to be on full flights anyway, so that's why I was checking. You can do that for yourself right now, and you can decide, because right now, to be honest, Lindsay, most of the flights are flying at less than 50% capacity. So most of the flights are taking off with less people, but over the next few days and over the next few weeks, we are going to be seeing more and more passengers take to the skies.
All right, Gio, some helpful tips there. Thank you.
Thank you.
As more states roll out their plans and businesses work to safely reopen, one entity that is seemingly absent from the entire conversation is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, better known as OSHA. That's the federal arm that is tasked with making sure that employers are keeping their employees safe. Should OSHA have a more aggressive role in setting standards for workplaces to reopen safely, or should this ultimately be left in the hands of state governments and businesses? Joining us now is the former head of OSHA during the Obama administration, Dr. David Michaels. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
So what's your biggest concern right now as states are reopening? Is enough being done to make sure that workers will be protected as they head back to their jobs, and for those essential workers who've stayed on the job?
Absolutely not. Look, COVID-19 has become a massive worker safety crisis, and worker safety is the fulcrum which is going to determine whether or not we can open up the economy safely, or if we'll have thousands more deaths and have to close it back up again. What we need are strong federal rules. You know, OSHA, the agency I ran, and the CDC have been putting out recommendations, but they're just recommendations, they're suggestions, they're not rules. And the proof that rules are needed, the recommendations don't work, are the 10,000 workers in meat and poultry plants who've become infected with the coronavirus. Those companies knew those suggestions were out there, and they ignored them. What we need to see is an emergency standard that says every employer has to develop a plan to protect workers from this exposure. OSHA and the Department of Labor have said they won't do that. Congress is now considering legislation to require OSHA to do that. That's H.R. 6559. I hope that passes. If not, it'll be on the states. Some governors have said they'll do that, but it's got to be more than just state by state. We need a federal approach to this problem.
And you've advocated for firm guidelines from OSHA. How would a blanket set of rules work when the scenario we see in New York State, for example, is not the same that we see in other places like Montana? Why aren't the CDC and OSHA recommendations enough?
Because they're recommendations. They say this is what you should do, and they have lots of ways that employers can decide not to do that. Employers need more than just firm guidance. They need a rule. They need the government to say, you must do this. What I'd like to see is every employer sit down with their workers, figure out how are we going to make sure everybody's protected, because workers have a role in this too. They've got to take some responsibility, and they have to buy into it. But when employers and workers sit down, they look at the recommendations that OSHA puts out, they can embrace those. They can say, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to make it work. This is how we can work safely and not get sick. That's the only way it's going to work. But it's not specific. OSHA is not saying you must do it exactly this way. It has some very, very good guidance, but that guidance has to be followed by employers.
And I'm curious also, why doesn't OSHA already have a standard for airborne infectious disease? I mean, that's something that you worked on during your time in the last administration.
That's right. We started putting a standard together after the H1N1 epidemic, where we saw this was badly needed. We were working on that when I left in January 2017. It was on the table, ready to move forward. The Trump administration came in and they announced no more new regulations and let's stop work on everything that you're doing that could better protect workers. And so it's been sitting in a drawer for 40 months now. It could be out. It could be out there protecting workers. It could be out there telling employers what they need to do. But this is just one more reason the Trump administration has really abandoned any sort of commitment to working people in the United States.
Well, many essential workers have been hit with infections, including, as you know, those at meat packing plants where we've seen large spikes in cases. How concerned are you about the conditions at those plants as they reopen, and what additional measures need to be taken to protect those frontline workers?
Well, look, first of all, it is too late for many of those workers. They're exposed. I haven't seen what's been going on in every one of those plants. I know that some of the employers are very committed to doing it right, and others aren't. The problem is there is no requirement that they do it right. The Trump administration is saying, pedal to the metal, produce as many, steaks, cut chickens as you can, and if workers are hurt along the way, well, so what? That's wrong. We need to be slowing down the line. We need to be making sure every worker is safe, not only in meat and poultry plants, but as we reopen the economy in every sort of industry. If we don't protect workers, it's really going to be a disaster because workers and worker infections will drive this epidemic forward.
Right.
We need to stop that.
I saw a headline today, I think, that said something about what do you value more, the pork chop or the people? But lastly, I want to get at your concerns around the issue of liability protections for businesses. Could we see workers suing businesses if they get sick without those types of protections?
It's very difficult in any state of this country for a worker to sue their employer because workers' compensation prohibits workers from suing their employer. But giving employers liability protection is like giving them a free pass. It's saying, you can do whatever you want because OSHA has said it's not going to issue a standard. OSHA has said it's not going to inspect. So what is there to stop an employer from just exposing workers to all sorts of hazards? Liability protection, I think, would be a big mistake and really make it difficult to reopen the country because workers are going to be very scared to go back in.
Dr. Michaels, thank you so much for your time and your insight tonight. We appreciate it.
Sure.
We should also point out that current OSHA leaders have declined interview requests from ABC News to talk about COVID-related enforcement and complaints. Turning overseas now, there have been more than 4 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 around the world. 1.4 million of those confirmed cases have recovered. But now as restrictions are lifted, they're starting to get lifted, how can everyone stay safe? In Paris, where a 2-month freeze was thawed today, social distancing in daily life will prove to be difficult to enforce. Our Maggie Ruley has more on that.
Tonight, Paris coming out in full force the second the lockdown was lifted. Hundreds lining the waterways as people are allowed to leave their home without a permission slip for the first time in 55 days. Police forced to break up small groups. Many stores getting back to business.
Public transit is open here in Paris, but masks are mandatory.
The government handing out more than 4 million masks this week to riders. In the UK, more commuters are also returning to work. Tonight, the government releasing a 51-page plan on reopening the country after Prime Minister Boris Johnson was criticized for giving the public confusing guidance. But as lockdowns relax, the ever-present fear of another wave. South Korea, a country that was quick to flatten the curve, is now reporting more than 80 new cases, all linked to one person who visited 5 different clubs on one night. The government now tracing thousands of people. In Wuhan, China, the original epicenter, reporting a cluster of new cases for the first time in a month. In Brazil, shocking scenes of crowds dancing and singing, even as the country's death toll soared past 11,000, with many fearing it could become the next global epicenter. Still, there are encouraging signs of a return to normal. Shanghai Disney's reopening, but at a third of its capacity with strict social distancing guidelines.
We will gladly take those encouraging signs. Our thanks to Maggie. And when we come back, the surveillance video recorded in a home under construction. Minutes later, Ahmaud Arbery was killed in a chase that has sparked a national firestorm. Tonight, and on ABC News exclusive, we talked to the attorney representing the owners of that home, what they say about the case and their message to the Arbery family. Plus, the new White House measures after 2 people close to the president and vice president tested positive. But the big question, will President Trump ever wear a mask?
stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis, 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, nice to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Right now, how do you make sense of it all? Now, afternoons on ABC, one place with the good information you need.
We are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together.
Pandemic, what you need to know. Afternoons at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC.
We turn now to new developments in the fatal shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, the unarmed black man who was killed while jogging through a mostly white Georgia neighborhood. There is now a new DA handling the case, and federal prosecutors are being asked to get involved. ABC's Steve Osinsami has the latest.
State authorities in Georgia who've taken over this case from local prosecutors are now asking the U.S. Department of Justice to step in and look into the, quote, handling of this investigation. The family of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery, who was seen meeting his death in this violent recording, has been calling for federal hate crimes charges since their son was killed on this South Georgia street in February. Travis McMichael and his father Gregory are now charged with murdering the unarmed young black man in what they argue was a citizen's arrest. Gregory McMichael used to work in local law enforcement, and it's the actions of these two district attorneys, Jackie Johnson and George Barnhill, that are now under the federal microscope. Neither filed charges in the case. Both removed themselves because of their apparent connections to the gunman, and Barnhill argued in a letter that there was a fight over the shotgun and that the victim initiated the fight. Georgia authorities have replaced the white prosecutors with this woman, District Attorney Joyette Holmes from the other side of the state.
Now I have a sense of hope. At one point in the beginning, I didn't have any hope that anything would ever be done about it.
New video from the moments before Arbery was killed does show him stopping through a home construction site where he leaves empty-handed. The McMichaels told police they chased the young man down because they thought he was responsible for break-ins in the mostly white neighborhood. Tonight, the owners of that property underlined that they have no connection to the gunman, and no matter what, they say they would have never sought a vigilante response, much less one resulting in a tragic death.
And for more now, let's bring in Steve Osinsami. Steve, after two district attorneys removed themselves from the case, what do we know now about this fourth and latest DA to take it over, and what might it mean ultimately for the case?
Well, Lindsay, her name is Joyette Holmes. She is the first woman and first African-American to hold the position of district attorney in Cobb County, which is in the North Atlanta suburbs. She is widely respected among her peers. She is a black woman who is going to be overseeing this case. It also suggests that this case that is happening in the south of the state is probably going to be moving to the suburbs of Atlanta and be tried here if it gets that far. Lindsay?
Steve Osinsami, thank you so much. And joining us tonight for an exclusive interview is Elizabeth Grady, the attorney for Larry English, who owns the home construction site where the video was filmed. Take a look. This is believed to be Ahmaud just moments before he was fatally shot, allegedly by the McMichaels. Now, Ms. Grady, I want to bring in that you wrote that the homeowners, the English family, were, quote, not part of what the McMichaels did. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Well, the English's family's concern is that this video is somehow going to be used in some sort of false narrative in a way that would perhaps set up a justification for what the McMichaels did, which is something that the McMichaels took it upon themselves to do. My clients did not know the McMichaels. This video could not have been the justification for anything that the McMichaels did, because no one even saw this video until after Mr. Arbery was dead, until after he had been killed by the McMichaels. That's when my client first saw the video, and shortly thereafter found out Mr. Arbery had been killed. And he did not recognize the photos he saw of Mr. Arbery subsequent to the death as being the same person. He did not even know it was the same person until the Arbery said that they believed it was their son in the house that day, based on the video.
And how did Larry English find out about this video and that the shooting that happened moments later? What was his reaction?
He found out about the video because he had a camera set up in there. It was a construction site, so he just needed a camera just to make sure things were okay. There had been a few occasions in the prior few months, starting in about October, when someone had come into the house, and we don't know who that was. It's not clear from the videos who that was. It does not appear to me to have been Mr. Arbery, but I don't know. This is not very clear. It was all at night. And as a result, he had this camera there, and anytime the camera operated, it was motion activated. So it would operate, and he would get a little alert on his phone. And Mr. English was 90 miles away at where he currently lives. He was outside. He was working with bees. He handles bees and honey, and he had honey on his hands, and he got the alert, so he didn't even look at it right away. And when he gets the alert, the company has immediately sent him the footage, and so it was in his phone, and it was probably 20 minutes before he could even stop and wash his hands and clean up. At that point, he looked at the video and saw that it appeared to be someone was in the house that's under construction, and he telephoned the neighbor who's a couple of streets down, who is not the neighbor whose video has been out showing from across the street, not that neighbor, and also was not the McMichaels, because he had not spoken with the McMichaels and did not know them at that point. But he called the neighbor down the street and said, "Hey, I got a video alert that somebody's in my house. Do I need to call the police?" And the neighbor told him, he said, "Well, he's dead. He's been killed." And that's the first he heard of Mr. Arbery, because he didn't know him, didn't know who the person was, and at that point did not know if the person in the video was the person who had been killed, because they looked somewhat different. And when he first saw photos afterwards, he said, I don't think that's the man on the video, but he was told that it was. So.
And from this video, the construction site looks rather bare. Has Mr. English said if anything was taken from the property?
He said absolutely nothing has ever been taken from the property. When he initially did months ago, back in October, first contact local law enforcement through the non-emergency number to say, hey, someone's been coming onto my property. And like I said, we don't know who that was. He did not characterize it as a burglary or a robbery or in any way, shape, or form as any kind of crime actually having taken place, certainly not a felony, because nothing ever was taken. And even if something had been, though, I will say Mr. English has been very clear that he would never have wanted anything like this to happen, that even if some property was damaged or taken or stolen, all he would want is for the police to be called and for the police to deal with it. He would never want deadly force used to protect property. He's been very clear about that. He's been very distressed at what happened, and that somehow he and his family are being pulled into it by people suggesting that it was a result of this video or some other video from his home or anything that ever happened at his home, because he was not involved in this, and this video could not have been the instigating factor for what happened.
And you just briefly touched on it, but what has life been like for the English family in the past few days?
It has been really, really hard. First of all, Mr. English, he's suffering from some pretty severe health problems, and the reason that they purchased this home was to renovate it and move in. It was a bucket list type thing for him, and he had hoped to go and be there and be in peace and spend his time that he has fishing and doing that kind of thing. And he's never even moved in, and they may not move into the house at this point because they've encountered a lot of hostility. Understandably, the victim here is Mr. Arbery, and Mr. English will be the first to tell you that. And but still, as a result of what the McMichaels did, and as a result of them not being arrested for more than 2 months, there's a lot of anger, and that anger is being directed not only at the McMichaels, who are the instigators of this, and also at whoever took that other video during the actual shooting, but people are starting to turn that anger on the English family because it appears to, from what the McMichaels said, that they were somehow involved, but they were not. They didn't ask for the McMichaels to do this. They didn't know the McMichaels. They never would have asked for any of this to happen, and they are deeply sorry for the pain that the Arbery's are suffering as a result of what the McMichaels did.
And just want to underscore 2 points that you made, just to confirm. Nothing was taken from the property, and also the McMichaels had no idea of this video, that it even existed prior to the shooting.
Nothing was ever taken from the property, and as far as we know, the McMichaels could not have known about the video because my client did not even see the video until after Mr. Arbery had been killed. So for the McMichaels to have known about this video, they would have had a direct link from the security company and intercepted it before my client even saw it.
All right, Elizabeth Grady, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And still ahead, a snowy Mother's Day left many Americans asking, will winter ever end? Some answers with the national forecast. And play ball responsibly, of course, the new proposal from the MLB to bring back baseball and what it means for both fans and players. But first, our tweet of the day. He was a legendary actor, but also a dad. Ben Stiller paying tribute to his father on Twitter.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
Do you trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Whew. Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
The Wuhan airport, almost no one here.
The last flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle. Dozens of people were just rushed off this cruise ship.
This is ground zero.
It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind me.
This is the first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News, there for you.
Welcome back. Sources tell ESPN that Major League Baseball owners have approved a proposal that will be presented to players tomorrow that aims to have baseball back in home stadiums by early July. Let's take a look by the numbers. Under the proposal, so-called Spring Training 2.0 would start in June with a shortened season starting in early July. The season would be 82 games, about half the regular length, with the playoffs expanded to 14 teams from the usual 10. All 30 teams would use a designated hitter to keep rules uniform across both leagues. That's because the schedule will be built around geography, with teams playing division opponents and teams in nearby cities, regardless of league, in order to limit travel. The AP reports the season would likely start with empty ballparks. Teams estimate that upward of 40% of league revenue comes from ticket and stadium sales, meaning that baseball is going to take a big financial hit if fans are not in the stands in 2020. Of course, this is all still far from settled, but sets the stage for teams and players to begin negotiations on the complicated safety, logistics, and financial issues for any final deal. Stand by for news on that. Still up ahead, we've talked about nations with loose COVID-19 restrictions, but when we come back, our report inside the European country refusing to enact just about any measures to fight the coronavirus, why its leader refuses to act, and what residents are doing on their own to stay safe. Plus, the coronavirus hits the White House, what the Trump administration did after multiple officials tested positive for COVID-19. But first, here's some of the trending headlines on abcnews.com.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis, 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, nice to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The total number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. passing 1.3 million, and the death toll here surpassing 80,000.
From my point of view, we're on the other side of the mountain.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing that parts of upstate New York will begin a limited reopening this Friday. It'll include businesses that he says present low risks of spreading coronavirus. He says it's based on improvements in the state's infection and hospitalization rate.
We've been living with this for months. Other countries have lived with this for months. So let's learn. Let's be smart.
But New York City's mayor says the city there will not likely reopen until at least June. Meanwhile, at least 45 states have lifted some restrictions, taking the first steps to reopen and get people back to work. Cases are still in the rise in 15 of those states.
The World Health Organization announcing today it's seeing a resurgence of COVID-19 in China, Germany, and South Korea.
The numbers of those testing positive for COVID-19 in Russia have grown, and now the country has the third largest number of coronavirus cases in the world, behind only Spain and the U.S. In Britain, the COVID-19 lockdown is starting to ease.
A phase lifting is beginning here. Those who can't work from home in areas like construction and manufacturing being encouraged to return to the workplace.
South Korea now reporting dozens of new cases linked to just one man who reportedly went to 5 different nightclubs.
Over a month after the CDC recommended face masks be worn in public, the White House today sent out an email saying it's now requiring anyone entering the West Wing to wear a mask or facial covering. Staff are only allowed to take masks off when at their desks.
The Trump White House is ramping up its testing for COVID-19 after 2 members of its staff tested positive last week. Sources tell ABC News there is a list of more than a dozen people who work in the West Wing who will be tested every day for coronavirus before they report to work. Any aides who are scheduled to meet with President Trump will also receive a test. President Trump last Friday brushed off questions about a COVID outbreak in the White House.
Well, I'm not worried. No, I'm not worried.
But most business owners do not have that same access to testing.
From the White House Rose Garden today, President Trump says the U.S. is prevailing in the fight against coronavirus.
All of these machines here, they're incredible machines. They're the best anywhere in the world. No place in the world has this kind of equipment.
Iran's military says 19 sailors were killed when an Iranian missile mistakenly hit the Kanarik, a support vessel. During an exercise, 19 sailors were killed.
Turning now to Washington, where the White House is making changes after the coronavirus reached into the West Wing. Now, for the first time, White House staff, they're being told they should avoid coming into the building and to wear face coverings when they're there. At a Rose Garden press conference today, several members of the administration were seen wearing masks. And the core focus of the president's remarks today, the issue of testing as more states move to reopen. ABC News Chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl has the very latest.
Today in the Rose Garden, a sign of a new White House reality. Almost everyone wearing masks.
Just about everybody I've seen today has worn a mask. Yeah.
Were you the one who required that, sir?
Yeah, I did. I required it.
At least 2 people close to the president have tested positive, one of his military valets and the vice president's press secretary, Katie Miller. Senior staff at the White House are now getting tested every day, a luxury that's not available to most of the country, even as the president urges states to reopen.
When will it be that Americans across the country will be able to get tested every day as they go back to work?
Very soon. I mean, really very soon.
But should people be told to go back to work until they have that assurance that they and their co-workers are able to get a test, which we're still not there?
We're leaving that up to the governors, as you know, and if we see something wrong, we'll call them out and we'll stop it. But we are leaving it up to the governors.
A follow-up from ABC's Jordan Phelps.
Mr. President, there does seem to be a double standard here, Mr. President, where members of your own staff can get tests frequently when they need it, but ordinary Americans cannot. So when will the rest of America have the same access that members of your own White House have to testing?
If we did no tests in the White House, you'd be up complaining, why aren't you getting tests for the White House? See, we can't win, because if we didn't get the test, you'd be up. I understand you very well, better than you understand yourself. And frankly, if we didn't get tests done, you'd be up complaining.
But the president also insisted this.
If somebody wants to be tested right now, they'll be able to be tested.
If I can just get a clarification on the testing, we've seen clearly that the numbers of tests have gone up. There have been some advancements in testing. But you've said twice here today that every American who wants a test can get a test.
Yes.
That's not the case. 1.9 million tests per day is far short of every American that wants a test to be able to get it.
Well, I'm going to have the Admiral, but I will say, just from listening and hearing like you do, we all do, not everybody should get a test because they have to have certain things and they're going to know when they're not feeling right. Those are the people that will be getting the test. But Admiral, I'll let you take it from there, please.
So everybody who needs a test can get a test. We have plenty of tests for that. Right now in America, anybody who needs a test can get a test in America with the numbers we have. If you are symptomatic with a respiratory illness, that is an indication for a test, and you can get a test.
So Americans who are going back to work shouldn't expect and shouldn't want to have the same thing that people coming to work here at the White House have, which is the ability to get tested regularly, regardless of symptoms?
Let me clarify as well. People who come into close contact with the president get tested on a regular basis, okay? If I were not in close contact with the president specifically, I would not get tested.
The press conference ended with this tense exchange.
Said many times that the U.S. is doing far better than any other country when it comes to testing.
Yes.
Why does that matter? Why is this a global competition to you if every day Americans are still losing their lives and we're still seeing more cases every day?
Well, they're losing their lives everywhere in the world. And maybe that's a question you should ask China. Don't ask me, ask China that question, okay? When you ask them that question, you may get a very unusual answer. Yes, behind you, please.
Sir, why are you saying that to me specifically?
I'm telling you, I'm not saying it specifically to anybody. I'm saying it to anybody that would ask a nasty question like that.
That's not a nasty question.
Please go ahead.
And Jonathan Karl joins us now. John, the president and his top officials said again that everyone who needs a test can get a test, but they seem to be saying that about people who only show symptoms. What did the president say on testing capacity for the millions of Americans who show no symptoms at all?
Well, the president, when he first brought this up, said that everybody who wants to get a test can get a test. Now, they also went through numbers for us, and the numbers showed that they're at 1.9 million tests per day. That's a lot more than the number of tests we had just a couple of weeks ago. But in a country of more than 300 million people, it's a far cry from saying everybody who wants a test can get a test. So he seemed to switch his metric a little bit, suggesting, well, the people that need a test. And the only ones that really need a test are those that have symptoms, those who are sick, which of course is not what we're seeing play out here at the White House. You know, Lindsay, here, what they have started to do to protect the president, to protect his senior staff, is saying that all the senior staff that comes into the White House will get tested every single day. The rest of the White House would get tests at least once a week. There's very few workplaces in America that have anything close to that.
And John, we still haven't seen the president wearing a mask. Does that rule about everyone wearing a mask in the West Wing apply to the president?
Apparently not, and this has been brought up, and the president, as you know, the wearing of a mask is as much to protect yourself, to protect those you are with as it is to protect yourself. And the argument that they'd make is the president is tested so frequently, all the precautions are made, that he doesn't necessarily need to wear a mask. But, there's also the question of optics and the message that it sends. I don't know that we'll ever see the president with a mask, and that's a tough thing to be happening at the very time when the recommendations are going out by the CDC, by the federal government, that Americans should be wearing masks, when they don't see the commander-in-chief ever wearing one.
Jonathan Karl from the White House. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Lindsay.
We have talked so much about lockdowns and quarantines in recent weeks, but what if you lived in a country where the leader said it was all unnecessary? Belarus never imposed a lockdown to curb the spread of COVID-19. And take a look at this. Thousands gathered in Minsk over the weekend for a military parade. The president of Belarus was also there in attendance. But many in the country are weary of the government's lax policies toward the virus and are taking measures now into their own hands. ABC's Patrick Reevell has this report.
For weeks, much of the world has been locked down. But in Belarus, things are a bit different. On Saturday, the former Soviet country held its annual parade marking the end of World War II. Thousands of troops watched by 10,000 spectators. No social distancing, almost no masks. It was just the latest example of the highly unusual approach to the virus taken in Belarus under this man, its dictatorial leader Alexander Lukashenko. In Belarus, no lockdown has been declared. Cafes and shops are open, as are most workplaces. People go to church. Even the National Soccer League has kept playing, the only one in Europe. Lukashenko, who rules as a strongman leader, insists the virus is not that dangerous. The outside world, he says, has lost its mind, and lockdowns aren't necessary and are too economically damaging.
Можно, но зачем? Я не понимаю. Здесь нет вирусов никаких. Вот ты же не заметила, что они летают? И я тоже не вижу.
Another country has become well known for choosing to avoid a strict lockdown, Sweden. But in Sweden, the government still imposed restrictions, banning mass gatherings and telling people to social distance. But in Belarus, that hasn't happened. Last month, the government even forced people to take part in a Soviet-style public works day. In effect, Belarus is carrying out a high-stakes experiment for the rest of the world. What happens if you try to carry on more or less as normal during the pandemic? Right now, the World Health Organization is warning that the results of that experiment could be disastrous. According to the WHO, Belarus has the second fastest growth rate of infections in Europe, far more than its neighbors.
So far, what we observe, the so-called quarantine or social physical distancing measures are introduced in Belarus are very partial and based on voluntarily. So it's a voluntarily introduced or implemented by citizens. So there is no adequate physical distancing measures which were recommended by the World Health Organization.
The WHO has urged Belarus to implement quarantine measures such as closing schools and telling more people to work from home. Otherwise, it warns, hospitals could be overwhelmed.
At the moment, healthcare capacity allows accommodating all the patients, but with this growth, this capacity can be very quickly exceeded. And then we will have a problem that people who would require medical assistance won't be able to get it.
Belarus's official data shows the country has almost 24,000 confirmed coronavirus cases, but officially only 135 deaths, a number experts believe is suspiciously low. In a country where few trust official statistics, many Belarusians in any case are taking their own quarantine measures. People are avoiding those soccer games, for instance. Anna Filipenok has isolated herself and her son at their summer house.
When everywhere there's restrictions on mass events and you're told you need to contact less with people, we have a parade. It's absolutely incomprehensible. I know that in Sweden, they also haven't declared a quarantine. But the difference is that in Sweden, they honestly declared the statistics. How many infected, how many deaths. And in Belarus, it looks like the statistics aren't honest.
Some doctors in hospitals have said Belarus's death toll is artificially low, but many fear punishment for speaking out. One doctor told ABC News some deaths among coronavirus patients were being recorded under other causes, such as heart failure. In many hospitals, there's also a shortage of protective gear. Volunteers like Andrei Tkachov have taken it on themselves to gather masks and other equipment.
For Gomenskoye Hospital, 200 respirators, 200 gloves. Up to today, we've had 2,000 appeals for help from health workers. And for doctors, it's very important psychological support because they understand that they haven't been left alone with this threat.
President Lukashenko has said he will be proved right and that Belarus will not suffer worse than other countries. Ordinary Belarusians can only hope he's not wrong. Patrick Reevell, ABC News, Dublin, Ireland.
Our thanks to Patrick for that perspective. And switching gears now, with the weather getting warmer, it seems there are more Americans itching to get out of quarantine and enjoy the weather. But this past weekend, spring for many seemed far away, with snow coming down in parts of the Northeast as temperatures dipped below freezing. So when will spring weather finally arrive? Ginger Z has the forecast. Hey, Ginger.
Oh, Lindsay, people are so ready for a warm-up, and I do have that in this forecast. But first, can we just talk about what happened this weekend? Dozens of record lows and all-time May record lows, from Indianapolis, Indiana, over to State College, Pennsylvania. That snow this morning, overnight in Detroit, oh my goodness, a lot of records were set. And tomorrow morning, we could see a few more records set. There are freeze warnings, frost advisories that stretch all the way from Minnesota down south to Virginia, up into New Jersey and New York. But it really is just the next 24 hours, and then things start that upswing. So I'm promising you that after the freezing mark or the wind chills around there in Pittsburgh or close to 40 or below the feels likes in New York, things are going to warm up, and significantly. I know you saw it. Those snow flurries added up to a trace of snow at Central Park over the weekend. That tied as the latest snowfall, at least a trace of it, in Central Park or for New York City. But guess what? We're going to see nearly 80 degrees by Friday. That is a really big change, and it all has to do with a big jet stream and a ridge coming our way, and we'll take it. Lindsay?
We will take it indeed. Thanks so much for that, Ginger. And we turn now to the UK and Queen Elizabeth, the 94-year-old monarch. While the country begins to reopen for business, the Queen will remain in self-isolation in Windsor Castle with her husband, Prince Philip. According to Buckingham Palace, the Queen will step back from in-person public engagements, quote, in line with appropriate advice, but she'll continue to perform other duties. She was supposed to host garden parties this month at Buckingham Palace and in Edinburgh, Scotland later this summer, but they have been canceled. And when we return, the good news that we all need to start off yet another week, plus honoring the life of a comedic legend.
Right now, how do you make sense of it all? Now, afternoons on ABC, one place with the good information you need.
We are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together.
Pandemic, what you need to know. Afternoons at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner of 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards, including the most prestigious honor, Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news choice.
Good morning, sunshine. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. America. Say good morning. Now I want you to wake me up.
ABC News, America's #1 news source. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
But out of that,
a new holiday was born. A Festivus for the rest of us. And at the Festivus dinner, you gather your family around and tell them all the ways they have disappointed you over the past year.
And is there a tree?
No, instead there's a pole. Requires no decoration. I find tinsel distracting.
A Festivus for the rest of us. That was Jerry Stiller playing the eccentric father, Frank Costanza, on Seinfeld. Stiller, a comedy legend, passed away last night of natural causes. Before making us laugh as the wacky dad on both Seinfeld and King of Queens, Stiller was one half of the pioneering comedy duo Stiller and Mira, with his wife of more than 60 years, Ann Mira. Their son, Ben Stiller, who shared the news earlier today, took to Twitter this evening to say thank you for the outpouring of love and appreciation. Jerry Stiller was 92. And now to our image of the day, a small sign that France is slowly returning to some semblance of normalcy. These friends shared this deep embrace today as the country eased lockdown restrictions, a shared moment of relief and optimism after nearly 2 months of isolation, now hugging it out. And as more countries begin to ease lockdown restrictions, it's giving us all some inspiring stories. So before we go tonight, James Longman shares with us some of the little glimmers of hope we so desperately need.
Hi everyone. Reopening means different things in different places, but we are starting to see hope shine through. France had one of the strictest lockdowns in the world. Now people today out and about for the first time enjoying the sun.
So you have just been for your run, and that's the first time today anyone in Paris is able to do that. Is that right?
Yeah, it's crazy. You can feel just how excited and relieved people are. For the past 55 days, no one could leave their house unless they had a signed permission slip saying they had some reason. But starting at midnight last night, people can now come out whenever they want. And you can just take a look.
Oh my goodness, it really looks like pretty busy.
It is. I mean, I've been running now along the river for an hour and I've seen thousands of people.
And in China, ABC's parent company Disney has opened Shanghai Disneyland there, and they've been closed for 3.5 months. Hundreds of people lined up to get in, and the tickets sold out almost immediately online.
Because it's Mother's Day.
Now, first up, as people around the world yesterday celebrated Mother's Day, of course, social distancing meant people had to get a bit creative with the way they celebrated Mum. These are our favourites.
I'm putting mine wire through the top. And you have to put yours through the bottom hole. Okay, you're shorter. And then I get to hug my mom.
And now something a little bit different, showing even in the saddest moments, we can find hope. Meet the Pinata family. Now, they're originally from the Philippines, and sadly, Mum Sylvia died from coronavirus. But her children are spread all around the world. They couldn't get back to Manila to properly mourn her. But they found this creative way to go through the traditional mourning rituals that people in that part of the world hold. It's very moving. They basically defied time and distance to come together and remember Mum Sylvia.
In Philippine culture, it's I think I've mentioned to you, it's very Catholic, it's very Christian, right? But also you have all of these extended families, and so when there is something like a death, it actually is borderline festive, because all of these people begin to come together to pay their respects, but at the same time, it's also a time to catch up.
It feels more like a celebration of life than a mourning of someone passing.
That even though we couldn't physically see each other, which a normal grieving would be, it just knowing that this was happening elsewhere was really great.
I think you'll all agree there was something really special about that. Thank you for speaking to us, Blums, and I hope you get back to the Philippines soon to see your dad. Now, last up, this is really wonderful. Meet 11-year-old Emerson. Throughout this crisis, she's been writing loads of letters, but she decided to write one special letter to her mail carrier, Doug, and it sparked something really beautiful. Have a watch.
He has a really busy job, so I wasn't sure if he was gonna write back, and I did watch him, and he looked like kind of surprised. He was like, "Whoa, that's for me."
A few days after M sent her letter to the mail carrier, we got a nondescript envelope just addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Weber from the United States Postal Service. Now, they had shared her letter in the internal newsletter for the United States Postal Service, and that she had some fans and they wanted to send her letters and would we be okay with that. I found it really interesting in these letters how personal people were. They talked about pets and the things that their families did for a living and the places they lived. But they also talked about things like how lonely they were, how much they appreciated the fact that she saw how hard they worked and that they were essential and that they're kind of an invisible behind the scenes group, the group that really keeps things going. And
just taking time to write a tiny little thank you note to your mail carrier would like make someone's day to the extreme. And like little things can also have big impressions on people.
What a brilliant young lady. That's it from us tonight. Stay safe, everyone, and be good to each other.
And certainly a brilliant idea, that plastic shower curtain type hug. We love that. Certainly beats the virtual hugs. But that is our show for this hour. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and good night.